and watching how that changes, watching the twists and turns if you want to put those in, and I know you do want to put those in and should. That's half of the interest, and half of what keeps the reader engaged is going through that story rather than going, Stacey's got something he's holding behind his back and I don't know what it is. Okay, so let's start with this. I am going to ask Stacey, since he was kind enough to read for us, if he will tell us first what the name of his book is and what his vision for this book is. Meaning, what's your goal in writing this book?
The vision for the name of my book is New Madrid's Fault. And the vision for my book is for it to sell, be published, and be the world's best seller.
You know what?
I would like it to be published, period.
That's actually very easy to work with. Sometimes it's not as straightforward and it can be really hard. So we will look at your work with an eye to what the contemporary reader wants and needs in a book for it to be a bestseller. Thank you for that. Now I'm going to ask you to do the MCS, Stacey.
Okay. And I'm supposed to do this in 90 seconds?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Starting in 1968, Frances Biscuit Gardner is nearing the end of her 15-year prison sentence. She encounters a new cellmate, and that sparks her sharing her coming of age story set in the 1950s American South in Missouri. So amidst a backdrop of family turmoil, Biscuit grapples with a manipulative mom and an abusive father. And then tragedy strikes soon with a drunken accident when a drunken accident claims a young boy, and that triggers a violent outburst from her father, leading to her mom committing an act of self-defense. Biscuit's life then takes a dramatic turn when she discovers a journal from the 1800s from an ancestor that survived a devastating earthquake. This unveils a family legacy of mental instability, and Biscuit delves into her family's history with this and suspects her mom is harboring lots of dark secrets that could endanger she and her sisters. So even worse, though, is the realization that this madness has spanned generations and could be creeping into Biscuit's own life, period.
Wow. Good job, Stacey. How did that feel?
That felt pretty good. And it felt pretty accurate. Pretty, I mean, all the essential elements, I think, are there.
And I think that you've been working on this a long time and really thinking about it, and it is beginning to gel. And so it does get easier and easier. So thank you for that. Now, with that in mind, can you tell us, basically, give us a lead into what's going to happen in this chapter, and then so that anyone at home can follow along with us?
It's basically introducing Biscuit's father into the family dynamics and creating and telling her, showing her relationship with him through a couple of flashbacks of what he was like when she was younger and some of the ramifications of that.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you. So I am going to ask Melany if she'll start with some feedback for you.
Absolutely. Let's see. Let me pull it up here. Yes, Biscuit continues to intrigue me very much. She's a fascinating character. Let's see here. So one thing that definitely jumps out to me as we're learning more about her is her interest in reading. And I'm curious to understand that a little better, like what motivates that, if it's escapism, if it's intellectual curiosity, if it's something else, because it does seem maybe a little atypical for someone her age, maybe. Along the same lines of that, as I try and like form my opinion of her as a character, I'm trying to decide if she's super intelligent and can intuit things that maybe most people don't, or is she sometimes gullible? Like her understanding of the Soviet Union, I thought was, wise beyond her years. But in this chapter, like for instance, still believing in Santa when she's 10 years old, which seems a little bit opposed to, just I'm trying to figure out what to do with that. Like the through line in her reading and her intelligence and or gullibility. On page 2, I wanted to look as good as I could for Daddy. Uh-oh. My uh-oh radar went off there for sure. And then shortly after that, you're describing what she looks like, looking in a mirror. And I was wondering if maybe adding in some kind of an action might make it feel a little more organic, as opposed to just a straight description of herself. Another very tiny thing, but I think it does speak to character, is you describe her as having jet black hair. And so when I think of someone having jet black hair, I think they color their hair, which, maybe it's just very dark hair. Because if she colors her hair, that just, gives me another nugget about her that might change what I think about her.
Interesting.
On that same page, when you say, I rarely smiled, mostly because I didn't want to make my mouth any bigger than it already was. I'm sure there were other reasons too. I really love that sentence because I feel like that respects the reader, right? Like, I think readers don't want everything handed to them on a silver platter. And I just think that's a nice nugget to throw out there that we can just keep in mind as we're reading. I also love the insight at the top of page 3 about how she cleans when her life is feeling out of control, and that's a way she can impose order. That feels like a very mature insight. In the second paragraph on page 3, it seems like there's a little bit of a disconnect there of not knowing when her dad gets home, but then he always gets home around 5. So it seems like she really does know when he gets home. Very tiny, but just thought I'd mention that. In the middle of that page, when he does show up, when you say, I didn't want to do anything but run to my room, lock the door, and crawl under the bed. Then after that, you say why Daddy was home. I think you don't need that, and it might be stronger without it, because we feel her angst. Let's see. Sort of similarly, at the top of page 4, there's a little bit of a flashback from her history about cleaning the trough for the horses drinking. And the last line in that paragraph was, I was so frustrated, feeling like my hard work had been in vain. I would say that also comes through in your description of her memory and may not be needed.
Okay.
At the bottom of page 4, so we did see this at the beginning of your novel. I'm not totally sure I understand the reference to the king monster and the monster house. I don't know if it's her dad. And I don't necessarily think we need to understand all of it right here. but I felt like maybe I needed a tiny little bit more context just to understand what you might be hinting at, but maybe see if others feel that way. That may just be me.
Okay.
So on page, let's see, page 5, the first mention of what happened with Richie. I don't know what that means at this point. And of course, we're not supposed to know what that means, right? But I wonder if it would be, if there might be more of a punch to that, if instead of a reference of what happened to Richie, maybe when Richie XYZ, like the specific thing that happened to Richie. And then later on, the revelation could be that maybe, and I don't know, but if Biscuit is somehow implicated in that, I don't know, just an idea.
Okay.
I'm going to take a little poll quickly, Melanie, of who was confused by, in a frustrated way, the Richie mention. Pam, did you want more?
I think if I didn't already know, because remember I have been through, seen this manuscript, yes, it would stop me and I would say, what is Richie? And I think Melanie has a good idea of just giving a tiny bit more insight into what happened to Richie. We don't have to know how he connects with Biscuit's life, but knowing a little bit more of the specificity, you're not killing the mystery. I know you like to keep those things in suspense, but you are providing a little bit of a thread for the readers to connect. Because if they don't feel like there's a thread, then when you come out with a big thing, it's not going to hit as strongly because they're going to go, wait, I forgot about this.
It's not the first time I've mentioned him, though.
Okay, hang on a sec. Hang on. Alex, how about you? How did you feel about that with Richie?
I agree. It's actually kind of the center point of my comments, so maybe I'll just wait. But yeah, reveal it.
Okay. Okay, Stacey, what were you going to say?
I was just saying that it's not the first time he's mentioned. He's mentioned back in the prison scene, in the prison scenes there.
Well, I will say this. We don't remember because nobody said they remembered him from that scene. We've all read the prison scene. So even if he's mentioned, then that needs to be stronger. There needs to be some sense that there's a connection going on, and you can still keep plenty of suspense, I believe, but your bestseller readers want more. Just saying. Okay, go ahead, Melanie. Continue with your thoughts. Thank you.
Let's see, the second to last paragraph on page 5, I could see what had attracted Mother to him in the first place. I think that's a really interesting comment, and I don't know what to do with it, and that's okay. I just wanted to say that's fascinating. And, you know, I think the reader can kind of contribute to meaning making there. I just wanted to say that's really interesting and creepy.
Yep.
Let's see. Yeah, so there's another reference about the monster home at the top of page 6 that, again, I'm not 100% clear on. So the first flashback of swimming, how she quote unquote learned to swim, or her dad tried to teach her how to swim, was so well described and so horrifying to me. And I really have so much of a very clear idea of who he is. And I was terrified as I was reading that. So I just want to say that was so good. Then as soon as that ends, you go to a second flashback. And I think that flashback has good info in it, but I think I would maybe see if there's a different place in the story you could use it. Because after the flashback about swimming, I really want to go right back to the kitchen when he just got home from work, now that I know who he is, and see how he's going to react. And I
So we're getting some head nodding here from others in the group. I know you can't see it. Okay, go ahead.
I
Yeah.
think that you don't come back to the kitchen at the end of the chapter, and it feels like it would be like I would like to go back to the kitchen at the end of the chapter.
Right.
But kudos on creeping me out. It was so good.
Stacey does have a knack for that, kind of making your skin crawl in all the best ways. So there's a lot going on there. Alex, how about you next for some commentary? Thank you, Melany.
Yeah, I'm gonna mirror a lot of that. This I want to start by saying this: I could really feel the family tension in this chapter, and that was, something that I sort of wanted from the previous one because it was built up to, and I think this one, it was there, and that felt right. Also, her voice felt more kind of Southern in this one in a way that I thought was right. Likewise, and I think that's worth continuing. The purpose of this chapter is to introduce the father, and we get a lot of other characters. We get Richie and Chuck, and Darla and Papa, and then the two sisters in a different way than we had. And that's a lot of characters when the point of the chapter is to introduce one who's the main one in her mind. So I would really think about focusing on the father almost to the exclusion of other characters in this chapter, and let the other characters appear in different chapters, right?
So, Alex, let me ask you a question then. What is the introduction of all these characters doing to your read of the chapter that is not effective?
It's like reading the beginning of a Russian novel that has 12 characters with 4 names each, and you're kind of like, who do I need to keep track of?
Okay.
Who is this? How do they relate? I know you said, but I forgot. That kind of thing, right? Yeah.
So basically, that your brain can't hold it all, and you're not sure who to prioritize. That's what I'm hearing. Is that about right?
Right. And it's definitely clear that this chapter is meant to introduce the father, and I think that's a good purpose. Chapter 4, it's about the right moment to really delve into that relationship. The previous one was about the mom, so this one's about the dad. Like, I think it just kind of fits. It flows really well. And from a reader's point of view, it's like, yeah, that's who I want to know about next. So I want to know about him and their past, and some flashbacks is great. So yeah, I want to see those. But I think, possibly except for Richie, because that moment seems important. The others you can probably minimize to the point of just saying my grandfather rather than naming, and that kind of thing. My oldest sister rather than naming, and then just let those names be memorized later by the reader. My main theme for this is reveal everything. Don't withhold information. The point of view character, the protagonist, knows who Richie is, knows what he did, knows the after effects. So she doesn't need to hide it from herself. And since this is a limited third, she's not going to not know what Richie did. From the reader's point of view, there's also no reason to not say, Richie, who killed his brother or whatever it is he did, because it actually adds to the drama. If the line is something along the lines of like, after Richie murdered his neighbor, blah, 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 then the reader suddenly perks up and thinks, whoa, Richie's A, important, and B, is a major plot point later. I need to really track this. And how did how did that happen? Why? And then presumably the main character got blamed for it and went to jail for it or something. I don't know. I want to figure out what's going on. So I keep reading. If it's just that, Richie did something that was bad, then the reader's kind of like, okay, well, let me just keep going and figure out where we're going with this, right? So there's actually less mystery the less you reveal,
Or something bad happened to Richie.
right? Or Richie was right. Richie was killed by the protagonist, or like whatever. I mean, regardless of what it is, let us know what it is, because the protagonist knows what it is. So therefore, the reader needs to be in step with the main character. And if they are minimizing it within themselves, you can show that, and that's fine, right? If they're trying to deny it, that's fine. You can show that, but that reveals the character, so all the more reason to it adds layers, so never hide anything, because it ends up just sort of bringing the story to the surface, rather than forcing us to get deeper into it and figure out why did this happen, rather than what happened. Why is a better question than what, right?
I'm so glad that you articulated that in that way, because I've been trying to do that for about 6 months. Thank you, Alex. I think that's important, because you're tracking their evolution over the course of the story. And what they know at the beginning is just the beginning of what they know and what they experience and what they cope with. And watching how that changes, watching the twists and turns, if you want to put those in, and I know you do want to put those in and should, that's half of the interest, and half of what keeps the reader engaged is going through that story, rather than going, Stacey's got something he's holding behind his back and I don't know what it is. That, I think, if we think it, and I've mentioned this in some loose way before, it's okay if you misdirect us, but we should have something to hold on to. I think that's super important. And then let it change and twist and turn in the wind. That's fine. That's great. But let us feel like we have some bearing, and that we're thinking within the story, rather than going, I know this will come up in chapter 10 or 12, but I really wish you just let me know now, and then maybe I could get more deeply into the character's mindset or something like that. Can you guys hold on for 1 second, and I'll be right back. Sorry about that. Yeah. And you're welcome. You're welcome to talk.
By the way.
What shall we talk about?
So I'm cooking green bean casserole. Pretty classic.
Very classic.
Canned or frozen green beans?
Fresh.
Oh.
Yeah, fresh. Bit of parboil. Then put it in the sauce. I'm going to make the sauce separately, and then.
Anybody not having turkey?
We're not having turkey at my mom's house because she's allergic to it, actually.
Let's see. You never know.
Wow.
Interesting. So what is the alternative Thanksgiving meal?
It's based on honey baked ham.
Oh,
So it's basically like a Christmas meal scooted up a few weeks.
yeah. Perfect.
What's in the turkey that she's allergic to?
I think it's the iodine.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
Iodine.
About every 7 or 8 years, she'll test the water, and it's not good. Because she, ironically, loves turkey. And it's not good. Yeah. I think she's finally given it up for good.
Interesting. Has she had that allergy all her life?
For at least 40, 45 years, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. I have never met anyone allergic to turkey. Interesting. So,
But chicken's okay?
Yeah.
Huh.
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 I think it's iodine. I might be wrong about that.
Yeah, sure. Why not, right?
That's right.
Sorry about that. I had to take a wild coyote and put him in my car. Really, he acts like a coyote. Anyway, so Alex, had you finished your comments? I can't.
Where do we leave off? All right, so the Richie thing. And then, yeah, flashbacks are so hard to manage. How do you get into them? How do you get out of them? And how do you like let the reader know as subtly as possible without being too obvious while still being obvious that you're in the real-time moment versus the flashback moment? And that's always, something that we have to sort of figure out how to do. My sort of general thoughts are set up the point of view in the moment in real time, establish a visual anchor or a physical anchor or a descriptive anchor or something, or some reference point, and then go into the flashback and then repeat that reference point so that the reader knows, oh, now we're out of the flashback, right? So it's a really clear moment. So we know when it's starting and ending. There's a moment on page 7 where I feel there was a bit of I wasn't quite sure if we were back or not. And if possible, make the flashback a single paragraph, unless it's a really long scene, in which case, obviously, you can't. But the cow scene on page 3 and 4 was multiple paragraphs when I felt like it could just be one paragraph, and the reader would just know, oh, that paragraph is the flashback, and once the paragraph's over, we know. And then also keep the flashback chronological, unless there's a real serious reason not to, because that'll, the reader's gonna just be confused. They're on the border of confusion no matter what in a flashback. So just keeping the flashback itself as simple as possible is worthwhile. And also you need an internal and an external reason to go in and out. And that's, that's something that's sort of difficult. It's always, I struggle with it a lot because I have a lot of flashbacks in my piece. And, so I always try to figure out, is there some trigger externally that makes them think the memory that ends up becoming the flashback? And then is there some external trigger that brings them out of the flashback that then describes the real-time moment that the reader is then broken from their thought, And then likewise, at the same time, and sometimes differently, there's an internal thing where the protagonist is like, I want to think about this moment. So they do at this time because of the external or internal transition, sort of situation happening in the real time. And then likewise coming out like that, sort of both don't need to happen every single time, but it's helpful to at least sort of have that, so you don't have to force it, so you don't have to tell the reader, now I'm thinking about a memory, like that kind of thing, which you didn't
Flashbacks,
do.
no, flashbacks are so hard to do in an organic way, a seamless way. So these are good tips. I can't tell you how many times I've done the dream thing and then go, no, I can't do the dream thing anymore. That's not going to work. It's a tough one. So now again, that might be something that comes in a second draft, that kind of finessing. And I know, Alex, with some of yours, we've gone into a second look at chapter, and it's like, oh, you found out there's a better way to handle this, and you cleaned it up a little bit. So that's definitely, those are some good suggestions. All right, I'm going to move on to Pam, unless you have any hugely enormous last.
Mirroring Melanie's, I think we need to return to real time at the end of the chapter to round it out. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just going to capitalize on 3 points that the other 2 already made. And the biggest one is what Melanie brought up and what Alex just said, which is real-time action stopped on page 6. And I think that for me, I think one flashback, the swimming one, is all you need, because on page 6, the last thing that Biscuit does is she's in the hallway or the doorway, and she wonders if Dad's going to say anything. You've been building up this tension. What's going to happen when Dad gets home? What's going to happen when Dad gets home? He comes home and he looks at her, and that's it. And we get nothing else. And I'm thinking she either needs to turn and run to her room and kind of wait there with her, arms clenched around her stomach for something to happen, or what. But to leave her hanging there just feels unfinished. And then the flashbacks feel a little disconnected to that. So I too wanted that real time action. The other point, something Melany made about Biscuit's character. There are times where she's incredibly insightful. And I agree with Melany. What is it that you want to show about Biscuit by that insight? And if you gave that paragraph on the top of, I think it was page 2 or 3, about her reading that Agatha Christie book, why? Why are you telling us that she was going to read a book, but now she's not reading a book and she only got to a certain point? So if that's in there, what I'm thinking is, are you using that to show she's reading this book and she throws it to the side because she's so preoccupied with what's going to happen when Dad comes home? She takes that magazine. Does she flip through the pages randomly? I want to see more of that tension building in her movements and in her thoughts, because she digresses and goes to clean, which is a fabulous way to handle tension and angst, but I think we're losing the thread of why she's doing it. So when she comes to the doorway and sees Dad and nothing else happens, we've lost that tension. But by returning to the kitchen or returning to that moment, you remind the readers, Biscuit is really tense because she has not graduated and Dad's going to find out. But we've lost that by the end of the chapter. So I think pacing was my biggest concern with that chapter.
Great. Thanks, Pam.
Thank you.
So we're hearing about the flashbacks, a lot of people in the scene and having to be responsible for remembering who they are and relationships. So perhaps thinking about paring that down, or at least doing a few things to make it less overwhelming. For example, not giving names to certain people just yet, but introducing them as cameos like Grandpa or whatever. That's always a good idea. If you have too many names, it can be overwhelming for people. It's just one of those things. The sort of dichotomy between this naive girl and a girl who is rather sophisticated in terms of intellect. Why is there that gappiness? We would like to know. Also, there is a definite creepy undertone of weird father-daughter dynamics. If that's a red herring, why is it there? If it isn't a red herring, hopefully that will be developed as a completely non-gratuitous theme in the book. And that can be done. It can be done very thoughtfully. But having read ahead, I'm not recalling how that theme fits in. So just a little flashing red light. If this is meant to be like this, it needs to have a purpose. It can't be gratuitous. It's too hot button a topic to not provide some meaning for.
Okay, be clear. What exactly are you referring to?
There's a very Oedipal something funky going on with how he's handsome, and you could see why others were attracted to him. Does anybody else getting that vibe? Okay, so we're getting, again, the head shaking. There's definitely some sort of latent sexual undertone regarding the father. If that's meant to be, then you need to pull it out and examine it thoughtfully. If it's not meant to be, then you need to know that and decide what you want to do about it. That's all. So, but it's coming along beautifully. The part about Richie, again, you need to think about that because I think there's so much that's going on in this story that revealing more in the beginning is not giving anything away. Again, it just makes it a more complicated situation, a more interesting situation than sort of holding it back from us. Because we know something's going on, but why it isn't revealed is unclear to us as readers, and sometimes that can let the reader down. So just something to think about. But a very enjoyable work, very well done. And how is it coming for you in general, Stacey?
Good. I'm working on it with this draft, cutting a lot out. So I've just so far, I think I've already cut like 3,000 words out. I think I put 3 chapters together in this chapter, so that may contribute a little bit to the disconnect with the flashbacks. So
Let me ask you a question here. I always get from people, I can't cut anything out. You'll miss this and you'll miss that, blah, 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 blah. How do you go into that second draft and cut things out? What is your technique for doing that?
I have a goal of cutting at least 25,000 words out of the entire manuscript. So I have a pretty specific goal of cutting out a certain number of words in each chapter. And so I'm just going through and with a scalpel and trying to find parts that are not explicitly necessary to the story, and putting and consolidating things.
So what is advancing the story and what isn't? What is redundant?
Right.
What is superfluous?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Also, and I
That's
think
hard. That's difficult.
It's really hard. I think that's the most important thing that you can do in trying to make a manuscript word count smaller. And other few things that you can do that are very helpful is try and be more concise with your writing. A lot of people write in a very passive voice. Passive voice goes much longer than an active voice, and if you should be writing in an active voice anyway. So always be on the lookout. Is this passive or active voice? We could do a whole day on this, and perhaps we will, but I think that's one really good way to distill down. And another way is to think about the word choices that you use, because often I see thousands of manuscripts. There are 3 or 4 words describing something when 2 or 3 would be better and 1 would be ideal. But it's hard to find that one perfect word. Nevertheless, it's not impossible, and it's very satisfying to do that. So if you have a discipline of finding just the right words for things, that's very helpful as well. But I have no doubts that you'll streamline things very efficiently, and you're doing the right thing first, which is this moving the plot forward? Is this moving the story forward? Not really. I can do without that. That is the most important thing you can be doing.
Yeah.
Bardsy delivers the tools, guidance, and support you need to produce compelling novels. Our well-researched and thoroughly tested approach includes our minimum complete story, a 90-second exercise that keeps your writing on track while fueling creativity, Bardsy Publishability Index, a 23-dimension checklist that offers attainable goals and provides actionable feedback, and our brand new comprehensive character developer that helps you construct unforgettable characters. Come see for yourself at Bardsy.com today. Try our workshop or enter our first chapter contest. Then, when you're ready, Elite Membership delivers writing groups, personal coaching, and a curated community. With Bardsy, your work will captivate everyone, from agents to publishers, and, most importantly, your readers.